Last week, I was in Brooklyn, New York for the opening of my show. I have some work from my upcoming book, Surveyor. That's on display for a few more weeks over at Brooklyn Film Camera. So it was a really fun trip. It was my first time in New York ever. So I wanted to share a little bit from the trip here with all of you and just share what the experience was like. This type of environment of sharing my work on a wall and in a space like this with people coming to see it, it's a different kind of experience for me. I was very out of my comfort zone doing something like this. I've shared a lot of my work in a number of different ways through prints, through these videos, through books and zines. But doing exhibitions and things like that is just something I'm not really familiar with. However, when Brooklyn Film Camera reached out, maybe at the beginning of this year, it might have been last year. I honestly can't remember. This has been, in the works. It's been on the calendar for a while now. But when they reached out, I obviously said I would be honored to do something like that. I had never been to New York ever before, so this would be a great reason to finally visit. I've known Kyle, the owner of Brooklyn Film Camera, for close to a decade at this point, way back when he was working for the Impossible Project, which now we're up to Polaroid again. I was excited to see him again and finally get to check out the physical space. It's an amazing place that they've got there in Brooklyn. And I went there to share some work from the upcoming book, Surveyor. So I made those prints here at home and I made them on my Canon 1000. And then I shipped everything off to Brooklyn. I also ordered some frames and mats and also had those shipped to Brooklyn. And everything was put together by my good friend Tyler Woodford. Wouldn't have been able to do this without him. Rather than getting everything printed and framed and ready to go and shipped off, this just seemed like a much easier way. So it's great to have friends in all sorts of different places. So once everything was there in Brooklyn, ready to go, the last thing that needed to happen was for me to get to Brooklyn. So I flew in on Wednesday afternoon and I had a little bit of time to kill before I went over to Brooklyn Film Camera. I was meeting them there around 5 o'clock. That way we could kind of get a plan for the following day. I got to tour the place. But first, I had to make a very specific stop. Going to the big city for the first time, I thought, there's got to be a place where I can go check out some fountain pens and some ink and some paper. If you know me, love that kind of stuff, and there are no shops like that anywhere near me. So I took advantage of that and I stopped over at Yoseka Stationery, an amazing shop. I could have spent an entire day in there testing out different pens and inks and paper. Super helpful staff. It's an amazing place. If you're ever in the area and you're interested in that sort of stuff, you have to go in there. I had an amazing time there. Picked up a couple of things, of course. I picked up this little passport size Traveler's Company notebook. It's a great kind of pocket notebook. I have a regular size of this, but wanted to try out the smaller one, and I actually might prefer the smaller size in these. So I picked this up along with a few other refills and pen loop, and I also picked up a new fountain pen. I've got a Kaweco Sport in brass. I've owned other Kaweco pens before, but oddly enough, never the Sport, a very common and popular pen, and the brass one just feels amazing. It's going to age well over time with use. I've got a Kaweco Lilliput in copper, and it looks incredible now that I've been using that for years, so super excited to pick this up while I was there. And I also picked up some ink, of course. I've got some Diamine Vintage Copper. I've always been a fan of Diamine's Ancient Copper. Vintage copper, it's got a little bit of a shimmer to it, looks great, and I'm a sucker for any sort of red, orange, brown, anything in that hue. I'm a sucker for ink like that. So had a really good time checking this stuff out at Yoseka Stationery. If you're not interested in fountain pens or anything like that, hope you enjoyed that. But after that, I went over to Brooklyn Film Camera, finally got to tour the place, meet everyone there, as well as Ben. Ben is someone I've known just through, social media and YouTube and everything. You should definitely check out his YouTube channel in an instant. He's truly made to be the host of something like this. He's incredible at what he does, great photographer, and just an awesome dude. He introduced me to everybody. I got to meet the whole staff. And then afterwards, he made a portrait of me on some Type 55 with this Graflex that he has. I've never got to shoot Type 55 myself. So to have my own portrait made on that film, I was super excited just to see the whole process and see the negative. He had me cheesing and looking off into the light there while I was holding the reflector. And I just look very happy to be there, which I was. It was great to finally meet Ben, meet everyone there at BFC, and just finally get to check out the space. While I was there, we also filmed a 20 questions video where Ben interviewed me with all sorts of different questions. As I mentioned, he is perfect for this kind of role, just hosting anything in general. So that was a lot of fun. I'm excited to see that one once it's ready. And once it is, I'll be sure to pin it in the comments down below with the link so you can check it out as well. And to finish off my first night in Brooklyn, of course, they had to get me some New York pizza while I was there just to get the full experience. Now, the following morning was the day of the show opening, so we were going to spend the majority of the day at Brooklyn Film Camera getting things installed and ready for the show. But first, I had to make a trip over to Manhattan for something very, very important. I had to go to Nintendo New York. My son Elliot is without a doubt just a 6-year-old version of me. I was the same way at his age, but I didn't have access to nearly the information that he does nowadays. So he's like this Nintendo sort of really just video game in general, this historian. He knows when everything came out and when it was released in Japan and then when it came to North America. It's unreal the amount of knowledge he has on this stuff. But we love video games. We play together every single day. So I had to make a stop over there. It took me like 45 minutes to an hour just to get to Manhattan, to get in there. But it was well worth it. I picked up just tons of stuff to bring back home for him. Barely had room in the bags that I packed, but it was well worth it. He was just on cloud nine when I got home with everything. But finally, it was time to get things installed over there at Brooklyn Film Camera. So I went back there and I met with Carlos. Carlos from Brooklyn Film Camera. I owe everything from this show to him. He was incredible to work with. I was very much out of my element in this sort of thing where I just thought, I have the work here, but in terms of the best way of displaying it and, setting up sort of the layout of everything, I really just leaned on him for all of this, and he was able to make his own suggestions. We kind of moved things around a little bit, made pairs of certain images, and really I just went off of all of his recommendations. Everything in terms of how it went together and how it was presented, that's all thanks to Carlos. So Carlos, again, couldn't do it without you. I greatly appreciate everything you did here. It was a great time working with him and just hearing from someone else give their input on putting pictures together. There was actually a couple of things where I thought, in the book, these pictures are at completely opposite ends in the sequence, but now I kind of might have to shift things around because it was really interesting hearing, how he was reading things and what he was putting together. So overall, it was just awesome being able to do that sort of thing with him. As well as my good friend Devin Blaskovich. I've known Devin for a long time, and as a matter of fact, he had his work on display the previous month at BFC, so it was great to see him again. He came in to kind of help with the install process, and then he was, my sort of tour guide around Brooklyn afterwards when we caught up. We had a little bit of time to kill between the install and the show opening, so Devin said it was absolutely essential that I got on the subway at least once while I was there, since it was just such a short trip. So we hopped on the subway. I got my little Metro card and everything, so I'm practically local now. He took me around on the subway. We got off after just a few stops and then just spent the rest of the time we had walking around Williamsburg. I really wanted to stop by Dashwood Books while I was in New York, but given the time and the distance there, we weren't able to make that happen. So while we were walking around, Devin showed me another bookstore that he really enjoys. It is Spoonbill and Sugartown Books, and I made a couple pickups while I was there. First up, Fred Herzog, Black and White. I've pretty much always known of Fred Herzog's work specifically for the color, so to see a book of his in black and white, had to pick this up. So far, I'm really enjoying it. And I also picked up this book from Joel Meyerowitz and Lorenzo Bracca, The Pleasure of Seeing Conversations with Joel Meyerowitz on 60 Years in the Life of Photography. That pretty much tells you exactly what this book is. It's just a very lengthy conversation talking about the work, the process. I really enjoy reading books like this, hearing from photographers talking about their own process, especially in sort of a retrospective way, like looking back after spending all of this time. Really fascinating stuff. So those are the two books I picked up at Spoonbill and Sugartown Books. And then we just spent the rest of the time walking back to where my hotel was so I could get cleaned up and ready for the show. And it was great. Me and Devin got to just walk and catch up. We talked a lot about how I was feeling at the moment, being there in New York for a show like this. The imposter syndrome was very real, and I felt very out of place and like, why am I here? What right do I have? And it was an encouraging talk for sure. Devin was able to put a lot of stuff into perspective for me and kind of ease my mind a bit before the show. So very grateful to Devin for that. And finally, that evening, the show happened, and I was truly blown away by the amount of people that came out for the show, getting to meet and talk with everybody. It was just a surreal experience for me to have people, in that kind of environment there to see my work. I've done different like meetups and events and stuff before, but I think for my own show and sharing my work, for people to show up for that specifically, it was a really cool feeling. It was a very, very surreal experience, but it was really a great time. And I had a lot of fun just meeting and talking with everybody. I'm extremely grateful to Brooklyn Film Camera for having me and for everyone that came out. It was also a very hot time. I happened to be in New York on a couple of extremely hot days. I had a couple people tell me like, yeah, this is probably the hottest it's been all summer. So probably should have booked October, but we were all packed in there at Brooklyn Film Camera. So apologies for all of the sweaty handshakes and hugs, but I received them just the same. So yeah, thank you to everybody that came out for that. I did not film a single thing. I had my camera with me to record stuff, and I didn't. I spent the entire time just talking with everybody and taking it all in and didn't even think about it. So all of the pictures and video that you'll see from the show, that's all thanks to everyone else that was there, because I was just fully not in that mindset of, working on a YouTube video, which I'm thankful for. I'm thankful I was able to just fully be present there for myself and just with everybody, getting to meet everybody and talk. It was just a great time. It was a really quick trip, but it was a great experience. I hardly shot any pictures while I was there, which I kind of expected that to be the case. Oftentimes when I travel really anywhere, especially if it's somewhere for the first time, it's like sensory overload, and I'm just really looking a lot and just taking it all in without pulling the camera out. So really all of the pictures I made were just at the show of other people. I shot a lot of Polaroids of some friends, new and old. I shot everything with the i2, and the show actually happened on the day of the i2's, announcement and release. So that was a lot of fun. There was a lot of buzz around the camera, so a lot of people were asking about it. I was able to hand it off to some people so they could try out, shooting with it. That was a good time. I shot everything with the i2. I didn't even pack my Mint SLR 670S, the modified SX70. Didn't even pack that, and I only packed the i2. So I feel like that kind of says something about the quality of this camera and just how much I'm enjoying it. Really glad I brought this one with me, though. I bought a bunch of I-type film for the camera while I was at Brooklyn Film Camera, and I had like 3 packs left on my way home and didn't even really think to mess with the hand check. Everything went through the X-ray, and it absolutely toasted these 3 packs of film. So now I've got some film that definitely doesn't look ideal for most uses, so I've got a few packs to save just specifically for experimentation now. Anytime I go through TSA, I always ask for a hand check, and the one time I didn't, well, you can see why I always do. The only other camera I brought was my SL2, and I only used that for a couple of portraits that I made that night of some friends, and those were really all the pictures I made. Like I said, I expected that to be the case, that I just wouldn't be shooting too much. I was really just fully taking it all in, and yeah, a lot of sensory overload for me for sure, but it was a great time. I really enjoyed my trip there. The work is going to be on display at Brooklyn Film Camera for a few more weeks, so definitely check it out if you're in the area and you want to see these prints up close. If you want to purchase any of these prints or any others from the upcoming book, I do have a print sale on my website happening right now. These are just 15 pictures from the upcoming book, Surveyor, where all of the funds from this print sale is going to go right into the production of the book itself. So if you're interested in checking that out, I'll have links down below. I've already been shipping out a number of orders since I got back. Really appreciate all of the support from everyone. If you want to print, link is down below, mattdayphoto.com, and that website was made with today's sponsor, Squarespace. When I first created mattdayphoto.com 10 years ago, I did it with Squarespace. This was long before they ever decided to sponsor my channel, but I chose Squarespace because it was just a no-brainer. They had everything I needed in one place, and all these years later, they're still continuing to build and add new features to their service, all while keeping it extremely easy to use while you do it yourself. Drag and drop customization, tons of different templates to choose from, along with 24/7 award-winning customer service that are always there when you need them. You can share your work there, have a place where people can contact you or even schedule appointments. You can even set up your own online store. Since I launched mattdayphoto.com, I've sold my own zines, photo books, prints, and merch all through my own website. No need to use a third-party service, and they also have tons of different plugins from third parties to keep everything in one place. Keeping track of your inventory, shipping fulfillment, it's all a breeze with their built-in tools. It's never been easier to build your own website, and you can start a free trial by going to squarespace.com/mattday. Use the promo code MattDay at checkout for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you to Brooklyn Film Camera for all of the hospitality, all of the love while I was there in Brooklyn. I had an incredible time. And of course, thank you to everybody who stopped by there in person. Doing that sort of thing, meeting people who watch these videos. Very rarely do I go and do any sort of events and things like that where I'm actually interacting face to face with the people who watch these videos. It's mostly just me talking to the camera, and I hear through messages, comments, emails, that sort of stuff. So to actually spend time face to face with people, that goes a long way for me at just, kind of filling the tank and keeping this thing going. So very thankful for all of you that stopped by, and thank you to all of you that watched this video. I hope you enjoyed me just sharing the experience from the trip, and yeah, that's all for today. So thanks for watching, guys. I love you, and I'll see you next time.